I never thought a simple night out could turn my entire world upside down. It started like any other evening, just me, a little restless, scrolling through my phone, when I stumbled across something that would haunt me forever. His tool was bigger than anything I'd ever seen, and I'm not just talking about a physical thing. It was something that changed everything I thought I knew about trust, love, and betrayal. You might be wondering what I mean by that, and trust me, I felt the same way at first. But this isn't just a story about infidelity, it's about the kind of secrets that leave scars you can't see, and how one shocking discovery threw me into a whirlwind I never saw coming. I want to take you back to the moment when everything started to unravel. There's a kind of calm before a storm, and that night, the calm felt almost deafening. My relationship with him had been steady, or so I thought. We'd been together for years, built a routine, a comfort zone where I believed nothing could shake us. But beneath the surface, things were already shifting in ways I couldn't yet understand. The signs were subtle, almost invisible, but they were there if I'd only looked closer. It wasn't until I accidentally saw a message that didn't belong to me, that the reality hit me like a punch to the gut. His words, the way he spoke about someone else, made me freeze. I didn't want to believe it at first. Maybe it was just a mistake. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But deep down, something in me knew the truth was far darker than I could imagine. What followed was a series of moments that felt surreal, half disbelief, half pain. Every laugh we'd shared, every quiet night in, suddenly felt like a lie. How could someone you trusted with everything betray you in such a raw and personal way? And the thing that shocked me the most wasn't just the betrayal itself, it was what it revealed about him. His tool, his weapon, was bigger than anything I'd ever seen, not in size, but in the damage it could do. It was a power I didn't expect, and one I wasn't prepared to face. You might think I'm talking about a physical tool, but this was something different. It was the ability to manipulate, to hide behind lies and charm, to twist the truth until it felt like my own reality was crumbling. It was his secret weapon, and once I discovered it, nothing was ever the same. The shock of that night stayed with me, the confusion, the anger, the heartbreak. I found myself questioning everything about us, about who he really was, and about what I was willing to accept. This story isn't just mine. It's about those moments when you realize the person you loved most could also be the one who hurts you the deepest. It's about how infidelity isn't always what it seems on the surface, it's tangled up in emotions, secrets, and decisions that leave a lasting impact. And it's about the choice you face when your world shatters. Do you walk away, or do you fight for something that feels impossible to save? As I share this with you, I want you to understand how complicated and painful these experiences can be. I'm not here to judge or to glamorize betrayal. I'm here to tell the truth, the kind of truth that's raw, messy, and real. Because sometimes, the hardest stories to tell are the ones that change us the most. So, where did it all lead? What happened after I uncovered his secret? How did his tool change me forever? Well, that's what I'm going to share with you next. The road ahead was full of unexpected twists, painful revelations, and moments where I had to decide what kind of person I wanted to be. But for now, I want you to imagine being in my shoes, the shock of that discovery, the weight of the silence that followed, and the question that kept echoing in my mind, could I ever trust him again? Or was this the end of everything we had built? Stay with me, because this story isn't over. In fact, it's just beginning. The truth has a way of coming out, sometimes in the most surprising ways. And when it does, it leaves you changed, sometimes broken, sometimes stronger, but always different. I promise you, what happened next will make you see infidelity in a whole new light. This isn't just a story about betrayal, it's about survival, about finding yourself when the ground beneath you crumbles. And as I tell you what came after, you'll understand why his tool was bigger than anything I'd ever seen, and why it changed me ever since. After that night, everything felt different, like the air around me had changed its weight. I kept replaying the message in my head, the way his words sounded so casual, so familiar, as if nothing was wrong. But to me, it was like a crack in the foundation of everything I thought was solid. I needed to understand what was really going on, but every time I tried to bring it up, he'd shift the conversation, laugh it off, or give me vague answers that only made me more confused. I started looking back at all the little things I had ignored before, the late nights, the sudden need for privacy, the way his phone was always just out of reach. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't enough, maybe I had missed the signs, or maybe I was just being paranoid. But the truth was, I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to believe that the man I loved could hide something so big from me. What made it worse was how normal he acted. At home, he was the same person I'd known for years, funny, caring, thoughtful. But there was a shadow underneath it all, a secret part of him that I couldn't reach. His tool, the thing he wielded so effortlessly, was his ability to hide the truth, to keep me guessing, to make me question my own feelings. And the more I tried to dig, the more elusive he became. I remember one night in particular when the tension finally exploded. We were sitting on the couch, watching a movie, and I asked him again, this time, with tears in my eyes, if there was something he wasn't telling me. His smile faltered just for a moment, and in that flicker, I saw something I'd never noticed before, a mix of guilt and fear. But instead of opening up, he changed the subject. It was like a door slammed shut between us, and no matter how hard I knocked, I couldn't get in. That night, I realized this wasn't just about a message or a secret affair. This was about trust being shattered in a way I couldn't fix with words. It was about the gap growing between us, filled with doubt and silence. And the bigger that gap got, the more I felt myself slipping into a place I never thought I'd be, the place where love turns into suspicion, and hope turns into hurt. The days that followed were a blur of mixed emotions. Part of me wanted to confront him head-on, demand the truth no matter what. But another part of me was scared of what I'd find, scared of losing him completely. I kept asking myself, how did we get here? When did the line between love and betrayal become so thin? And was there any way back to the person I thought I knew? As the tension grew, I noticed changes not just in him, but in myself. I stopped trusting my own instincts. I second-guessed every conversation, every look, every little silence between us. Even my friends noticed. They'd ask if everything was okay, and I'd lie, pretending everything was fine because admitting the truth felt like admitting defeat. But deep down, I knew I was running out of time. The longer I stayed in this limbo, the harder it would be to find my way out. And yet, the fear of what came next kept me frozen. What if his secret was bigger than I imagined? What if the tool he used to hide it was stronger than anything I could break through? The thought alone sent chills down my spine. One evening, I decided to check his phone, not because I wanted to invade his privacy, but because I needed answers. I told myself it was the only way to stop the spinning in my head, the endless questions with no answers. I hesitated, my heart pounding in my chest as I unlocked his screen. And there it was, a message thread that made everything real. Not just the words, but the way he spoke to her, the plans they made, the secrets he kept from me. It wasn't just a fling, it was a double life. But what shocked me even more was the calm with which he carried it all. His tool wasn't just about hiding a relationship. It was about control, the power to keep me in the dark, to make me doubt myself, and to keep living a lie without facing the consequences. I felt like a stranger in my own life, watching someone I loved slip further away with every secret. I closed the phone slowly, feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and something else, an emptiness I couldn't explain. That night, I lay awake wondering how I could fight something so invisible, so powerful. How do you battle a truth that feels like it's swallowing you whole? The story wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning to unfold in ways I never expected. The more I learned, the more questions I had. Was there a reason behind his betrayal? Was I missing something deeper? And most of all, could I ever find a way to heal from the damage his tool had done to my heart? As I struggled to piece together the fragments of my broken trust, I realized this was more than just infidelity. It was a journey into understanding how people hide their darkest secrets, and how those secrets can change you forever. But I wasn't ready to give up, not yet. Because sometimes, the hardest battles lead to the strongest versions of ourselves. So, what happened after that night? How did I confront the man behind the mask? And what did I discover about love, betrayal, and the kind of strength it takes to survive? You'll have to stay with me to find out. Because this story has many layers, and the truth, well, it's often stranger and more complicated than we ever imagine. After that night, everything became a delicate balance between what I knew and what I hoped was still salvageable. The truth had cracked open a door I wasn't sure I wanted to walk through, but the questions kept gnawing at me. Who was this other woman? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, why did he feel the need to keep this secret from me? The more I thought about it, the more tangled the whole situation felt. I started noticing the small changes in his behavior, little things that hadn't seemed suspicious before but now felt like pieces of a puzzle I was desperate to solve. He'd come home later than usual, sometimes smelling like someone else's perfume, or leaving his phone on silent even when he was just in the next room. It was like there were two versions of him, the man I thought I knew, and the one who was hiding behind a mask of lies. One evening, I decided to confront him, not with accusations, but with questions. I wanted to understand his side, hoping that maybe there was an explanation that didn't involve betrayal. We sat across from each other, the silence thick and uncomfortable, until I finally asked, "Is there someone else?" His eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite read, guilty, fear, maybe even relief that I had finally asked. But instead of a clear answer, he gave me a story full of half-truths and evasions, a story that only deepened the mystery. Meanwhile, my own mind was a battlefield. I wrestled with feelings of anger, sadness, and confusion. I wondered if I was to blame somehow, if I had missed signs or failed to be the partner he needed. But I also knew that trust, once broken, isn't easy to rebuild. The idea of forgiveness felt distant, almost impossible, yet part of me wanted to believe that there was still a chance. As days passed, I found myself withdrawing from friends and family, unable to share what I was going through. How do you explain that the person you love is living a secret life? That the foundation of your relationship is crumbling under the weight of betrayal? The loneliness was crushing, and I realized that this kind of pain doesn't have easy answers or quick fixes. There was also the strange way his tools seemed to affect more than just our relationship. It wasn't just about infidelity, it was about the power he held to manipulate reality, to keep me second-guessing myself, and to maintain control without ever facing the truth. I started to see how deeply deception can cut, how it creates a maze of doubt and fear that traps both people in its walls. I began noticing other people around us, too, the friends who seemed to tiptoe around the subject, the family members who avoided certain topics, and even his coworkers who sometimes exchanged knowing glances. It was like this secret was bigger than just the two of us, a ripple spreading wider than I expected. And that made me question how well I really knew the people closest to me. At the same time, there was a part of me that wanted to fight, not just for the relationship but for myself. I didn't want to lose who I was in the shadow of his betrayal. I started journaling, trying to untangle my thoughts and figure out what I really wanted. It was a painful process, but it was also the first step toward reclaiming my own strength. Yet, no matter how much I tried to understand or forgive, the biggest question remained unanswered: what would happen when the full truth finally came out? Was he capable of honesty, or was this just the beginning of a deeper, darker secret? And if I confronted him again, would I find the man I loved, or someone completely different? The tension between us grew with every passing day. The silence became heavier, the distance wider, and the mystery more suffocating. I felt like I was living in a story I didn't write, one filled with twists I couldn't predict. But one thing was clear: his tool, whatever form it took, had changed everything. And I was left wondering if I could survive the fallout. The journey ahead was uncertain, and the answers I sought were hidden in shadows I wasn't sure I was ready to face. But one thing was for sure: my life would never be the same again. Every day felt like walking on thin ice, one wrong step, one misplaced word, and everything could shatter. The tension between us was almost unbearable. I could see it in his eyes, the way they darted away when I looked too closely, the way his voice changed when he spoke. There was a wall between us now, built from secrets and lies, and I was trapped on one side, desperate to tear it down, but not knowing if I had the strength. I kept asking myself, how long could this go on? How many more nights would I lie awake, haunted by the fear of what I didn't know? I began watching him more closely, searching for any crack in his carefully constructed facade. The tool he used wasn't something you could hold, it was the skill of hiding, the silence between words, the empty spaces in a conversation that spoke louder than anything else. It was the power to keep me guessing, to keep me off balance, and to keep me locked in a cycle of doubt and hope. One night, everything came to a head. We were supposed to have a quiet evening together, but the silence was heavy, thick with all the things we weren't saying. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I confronted him again, my voice trembling, demanding the truth, the whole truth. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something raw and real in him, a crack in his armor. But instead of relief, it felt like the moment before a storm. He looked at me, and I could see the weight of what he carried, the burden of his own secrets. The air between us was electric, charged with years of hidden truths and unspoken fears. I knew this was the point of no return, the moment when everything would either come crashing down or somehow start to make sense. But just as I waited for his answer, for the confession or denial that would change everything, the doorbell rang. It was a sound so ordinary, yet in that moment, it shattered the fragile peace. Who could it be? And how would this unexpected interruption change the course of our story? I stood there, heart pounding, caught between the truth I demanded and the unknown that had just walked through the door. The night was far from over, and I knew the real battle was just beginning. The doorbell echoed through the house, slicing through the tension like a knife. My heart was racing, and for a moment, I forgot the fight we were about to have. He hesitated, then got up to answer it, leaving me alone in the heavy silence. I stayed rooted to the spot, the questions swirling in my mind louder than ever. Who could be there at this hour? And why now, when everything was already unraveling? When he opened the door, my breath caught. Standing there was someone I never expected to see, a woman, calm but with a sharp look in her eyes. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, and immediately the air shifted again, thicker and more charged than before. I could feel the walls closing in, the pieces of my broken trust rattling louder. This wasn't just the other woman I'd suspected. This was someone new. Someone with her own secrets, and someone who seemed to know things I didn't. She looked right at me, and in that moment, I realized the story was far more complicated than I ever imagined. This wasn't just about one betrayal, it was about layers of lies, hidden connections, and a truth that was bigger than any one of us. Her presence raised the stakes in a way I wasn't prepared for. Suddenly, the tool he used to keep me in the dark wasn't just about deception between two people, it was part of a tangled web that threatened to consume us all. I saw the tension flicker in his face, the way he tried to control the situation, but I knew he was losing ground. As she spoke, dropping hints and half-truths, I realized I was caught in something much darker. The lines between friend and foe blurred, and the real question wasn't just whether he had betrayed me, it was how deep the betrayal ran, and what price I'd have to pay to uncover the full truth. The night had spiraled beyond anything I could control, and the tool that changed me? It was bigger, stronger, and far more dangerous than I ever expected. Her voice was steady, but there was a weight behind every word she spoke, a story I hadn't been ready to hear. She wasn't just some stranger, she was someone from his past, someone he'd thought was long gone but clearly wasn't. She revealed how their history was tangled in ways I never imagined, how his tool wasn't just a way to deceive me but a way to cover up mistakes that could ruin him completely. The lies weren't just about infidelity, they were about protection, fear, and a desperate attempt to keep his life from falling apart. I watched him as the truth unfolded, his facade crumbling with every revelation. The man I thought I knew was layered with secrets that reached deeper than I expected, and suddenly, I wasn't sure if betrayal was the worst thing here. There were darker forces at play, things I couldn't have guessed, things that made forgiveness harder but somehow more necessary. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about us, it was about survival. We were caught in a storm of lies and half-truths, and the only way forward was to face everything head-on. I felt a strange mixture of anger and compassion, knowing that the man I loved was both a victim and a perpetrator in this tangled web. But just when I thought the worst was over, she dropped the final bombshell. What I'd uncovered was only the tip of the iceberg. There were others involved, secrets still buried, and the tool he wielded was more dangerous than either of us realized. The game was far from over, and the real challenge was just beginning. As I stood there, the weight of everything crashing down, I knew my life had changed forever. This wasn't just a story of infidelity, it was a story about how far people go to protect themselves, and how even the deepest wounds can hide unexpected truths. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. With the truth finally out in the open, there was no hiding from the pain or the questions that lingered. I took time to reflect on everything, the betrayals, the secrets, and the ways his tool of deception had shaped not just our relationship but who I was becoming. It wasn't easy, but slowly, I began to find clarity. I realized that trust, once broken, could sometimes be rebuilt, not by forgetting the past, but by facing it honestly. Forgiveness didn't mean ignoring what happened, it meant choosing to understand the complexity behind the lies. The man I loved had flaws and fears that led him down a dangerous path, but he was still human, still capable of change. The other woman's presence, the hidden stories, the tangled web of secrets, they all faded into the background as I focused on reclaiming my own strength. I learned that sometimes, the biggest tool isn't what someone hides but what you do with the truth once it's revealed. It's the power to decide your own path, to heal, and to move forward. Though the story was painful, it taught me about resilience and the importance of self-respect. Betrayal changes you, but it doesn't have to define you. What matters is how you respond, whether you let the past control your future or choose to rise above it. In the end, this wasn't just a story of infidelity. It was a story about finding light in the darkest moments, about the strength it takes to confront the truth, and about the hope that, even after the deepest wounds, life can still surprise you in the most unexpected ways. 3.